On this episode of the Business Samurai podcast, I'm going to go into a little bit of why I think cybersecurity is doomed, particularly for the small, medium businesses, of what the breakdown has been and why it's really the same thing over and over again of the failing of the human element within there. And I think that's a failure of technical leaders and business leaders not being able to communicate, not being able to talk the same language, as it were, to get on the same page so everybody can understand. So I've got a list of reasons and a couple of stories to share from my 20 plus years of experience in the technical field that I think that if we can correct this, we can start making some headway on the human side of things and start making some real progress on protecting the community, our staff, our clients and customers, and being good partners with other businesses with better security tactics, practices, and communication. So sit back and listen on the Business Samurai podcast as I go through my reasons of what we can do to improve cybersecurity and risk management for businesses. Do you enjoy talking business? Do you enjoy reading about business? Do you geek out over the entrepreneurial journey? If so, then you are in the right spot. The Business Samurai podcast brings you the stories told by the people themselves. You'll be immersed in a wide variety of industries, from venture capital to gourmet popcorn, learning how to be a better leader or the personalities behind solving the broadband crisis. At the Business Samurai, we believe it takes a wide variety of skill sets and experiences to be successful in business and life. Our aim is to not only entertain, but educate, for you to recognize how successful tactics and motivations in one industry can help propel you forward in your own unique business. Sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the Business Samurai podcast. I am your host, John Barkley. All right. Like I said in the intro, I'm going to go over what I think is going to be the failing between your very technical people, which we obviously need to have, as well as your non-technical business leaders and just other non-technical folk in general, that of course we need to have to make everything run extremely well. So one of the things, if you make it all the way to the end, I do have an offer. It's only $7 that goes through my risk management framework of what I do to evaluate. And it kind of backs up what I'm going to go through on my steps here on this episode. So let's set the framework. I want to give everybody who's not familiar with me a little bit of my short backstory so you can understand the context. I'm not just some random dude that has not experienced anything. I started back in technology in the late 90s. Started out on Unisys mainframes. So obviously you've seen those. If you've never seen mainframe or really old computers for younger folk, they would take up an entire room. I had these big reels of tape, no kidding, that were utilized for backup and recovery and things of that nature. There was actually a person that was only dedicated to doing backups of the Unisys mainframe because these tape reels, I think if you stretch them out, were miles and miles long, and the process would take like all night for very little data compared to what we have now. So then I went through the ranks, building computers, running networks, being an administrator in Windows environments, going into, being a full-on engineer. I was a consultant, hands-on, that I think it was before the term managed service provider was really even big, but essentially that's kind of what I did for tons of companies, helping some grow from 2 people to well over 500 and with a global footprint. Lots of government contracting, lawyers, medical. I got exposed to a ton of industries, a ton of different technology partners, and interacting with either in-house support or other vendors that are in the industry. So some of what I'm doing now is I want to help clients scale and grow their organization and really start integrating the technology better and improve general business operations. You're going to hear me start talking. You'll hear me reference that in a little bit, where I think a lot of when cybersecurity is in risk management is around process and procedures. Well, most businesses, small, medium businesses, and I can speak from this firsthand, really don't have process and procedures that are in play. So if you start working in an environment where something it needs to be compliant, and I think federal government contracting space is one of those, that all of a sudden, you kind of self-attested, yeah, we're doing all these things, but really nobody was. That all of a sudden, if it's going to be enforced on you, and you've got all these rules for this kind of one segment of technology and protecting data, but the rest of your business doesn't run on process and procedures, that it's you're setting yourself up for a hard time implementing, particularly if it's not kind of rolled out gradually. I mean, you don't build a house in a day. It takes months to start. You got to start with the foundation and work your way up. So that's a little bit of what I have done and am doing now, working with clients on integrating business strategy operations with the security mindset in play. So I want to start out with a story. And this is something that happened to me so I can kind of demonstrate a threat that a company faced. That I was the IT director. I ran a project for it. I helped out on proposals and a bunch of other things. And that was just, I had my hands in a lot of different areas. So the company had just won a new contract, and it required the development of a new software platform. And at the time, just to give you a sense, everything was housed in-house. The servers were all in-house. I had a team that helped manage this stuff, and everything was inside. We were just starting to see virtualization was still a big thing for those of you familiar with that term. You have a server, but it can handle multiple versions of an operating system. But we're just starting to see the early stages of where the cloud, your Amazon Web Services, we're just starting to really get a hold of things in the smaller medium market spaces. It was still something I would see your larger enterprises were definitely starting to adopt faster during this time period. But we housed everything in-house. So during this time period, I had like a trusted developer that I was very comfortable with, knew personally, and that was who typically, if they needed to build something that was a custom solution, that's who they typically went with. In this particular scenario, the project manager and the other company leaders decided to not use that same resource. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a pricing thing. I don't know if it was a capabilities thing. I never found out. I wasn't really I wasn't in the loop with this outside of, at some point, whoever was doing the development work would need access to the live production equipment. So they selected this new vendor to build the software platform out. And I just said, all right, I do not know who these guys are. So there's a couple rules. They have to have their own development environment. They've got to have their own testing environment for you to sign off on. We really didn't have a lot of resources internally at the time for that. And then we'll give access to the production. And at the time, being a smaller business, we had the other programs that we were already running. We could actually use one server essentially to run multiple programs because they weren't big. You're talking 20 people, 50 people, something like that, and they weren't like really heavily utilized. It didn't take a lot of resources, so we could run multiple different programs isolated on the same machine. So that's what we were going to do in this case as well, because again, it was another smallerish type project, but required a custom platform. So again, that was my stipulation. I was kind of just really out of the loop until it came time to, all right, we need to deploy this. And they were using a program called Basecamp. And Basecamp is a project management tool, and it's kind of a communication platform. I had access to it, but really didn't get into it because that program had nothing to do with me. I had no oversight. I didn't know about features. I just really didn't have anything to do with it. But that's what they were using, and I did have access if something did pop up or I got a question, which I think may have happened a time or two, and it really came into play here at the end. Well, we came in one day. They had everything had been signed off. They were in the process of deploying this new application on the same, on the existing machine. So we had to give elevated privileges to our subcontractor to go deploy this. And we did. We came in one day, and the machine is basically wiped clean. There was no data on it. It booted, it ran. They didn't delete the operating system. It wasn't like the machine was formatted, but it was gone. There was no data on it. The other programs were gone, just everything. And it became this scramble, everybody in a panic mode, like what happened? What was going on? So of course, at this point now I'm jumping in with the team and we're going through log files. Sure enough, we could see the vendor's name who had been logged in to the machine, and when things had been deleted. Everything was, we had good audit logs. We could actually track it. So after digging around, I jump into Basecamp just to see what had been going on. Who knows the last time I was in it? Again, not having anything to do with the project, and ended up seeing that they had actually the people that we contracted to that said, "Hey, we can build this." They also outsourced it to a third party themselves. So we were dealing with a subcontractor of a subcontractor, and we didn't know it. And apparently those guys had been, that subcontractor and his other resource had been getting into a fight over payment. The other guy felt like he wasn't getting paid properly or in a timely manner and deleted all the stuff. We didn't know that. The contractor that we had actually directly hired had given his name, login, and username and password to this other party. So every time we were seeing a login to it, it looked like it was from the right person. We were never asked to set up who this other third party was. And so it was absolutely crazy. And again, from sitting there going, this isn't a technology thing. Somebody needed to have told us to change the password, to turn off the account, to create a new account, something along those lines, something that would have been done in seconds that now caused, I don't know, it was probably 12 to 24 hours between the discovery of what was going on and then getting it recovered. And one of the other things, and then we're getting into where I started learning how to start talking a little bit more on the business side, even though I've got all the business degrees and all this stuff backing it up, but I was still having my head in the tech a little too much. Previous to this, I had asked for a more robust backup and recovery system, and something that would have allowed us, because we were having some more of these smaller production environments in house, along with email and a whole, stuff that makes the company run, that we could have recovered from seconds, or at least stood up a clone platform to get us running till we got, if hardware needed to replace or something along that line. And it was $5,000. I distinctly remember that being $5,000, and I was told no. And I'm sure I was going over the bells and whistles piece of it versus the financial side, in retrospect of that. Hey, we can recover in like 10 seconds, and it does all these snapshots and all of this kind of stuff. And all I could hear was $5,000, and I was told no. And of course now I had backup and disaster recovery in place, but it was basically taking a snapshot, once a day. So when we were able to recover this, restore all of this stuff back, there was a day's worth of data that was lost in this, on top of how much downtime had incurred since all the data had been deleted. So we get it back up and running, but this just goes to show that maybe I should have been more involved in this, or at least been tracking closer. Hindsight's 2020 in these cases, and maybe I should have went with a different business perspective. We could have got up faster. But quite frankly, this was a situation of the communication should have happened faster. All we needed to do was turn this account off if we knew that somebody else was having access to the system and was almost impersonating the person we thought, the company that we thought was having access had given their access away. What are we supposed to do about that? So it's a breakdown. This is where we got to start communicating better. We got to start talking better. So I've got roughly 8 things that tie in a little bit. That's the story that I had a long time ago. I've got several others that are probably like that, but that's just a story I had that, technology necessarily wouldn't have stopped this from occurring. This was a communication, not knowing who was in the supply chain. I could sit there and say I should have been tracking the Basecamp conversations a little bit closer. The project manager should have been tracking the Basecamp to see that, hey, who's this other person that's involved in this type of thing, or even seeing that they were in a dispute within the Basecamp project management software. It's crazy. So I want to go into this. This isn't exactly in any particular order per se, but so let's get into number 1. You got technical people that don't speak business, and they just jump into the weeds way, way, way too soon. So it's using that example when I was talking about the backup and disaster recovery, I was probably talking about how fast this thing could recover from us, and how fast, it does all these bells and whistles and boom, boom, boom. And I'm going, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And that's probably how they heard it. They probably heard me saying, this is something cool that I just want to play with. And I really wasn't tying things into business outcomes. So if you're looking to increase, let's say you need new technology, in place to make sure you're tying things back to business outcomes, that you understand the value that it's going to bring the business, how it's, something may minimize risk, maybe something's going to be a time saver, maybe something is going to, just enhance a client value, that you can sit there and actually say, this is what it's going to bring from us, maybe even from a monetary standpoint. You've got your kind of qualitative and quantitative measurements, the things that make you feel good, but also can you back it up with some numbers, time or money in most cases. And if you could do that, your chances of success are probably going to be higher if, the budget allows it, or in the next cycle. Number 2 on my list is kind of flipping the script on this a little bit, is the business side that are definitely non-technical. They've heard the buzzwords that are floating around out there, but have no clue what they mean. And saw this all the time, constantly trying to correct this over the course of my career. But one of the things that I've noticed recently, there's a big, hiring difficulty in the cybersecurity industry. And this is something where I think people are looking to certifications to try to qualify people, which I'm not going to sit there and say whether that's good or bad. The problem is they're using the wrong certifications for the wrong job requirements of what they're really looking for. And so, give you a good example of this. This is something I actually went through recently with speaking to an organization, that one of the requirements were they wanted to have a CISSP. So I've got that certification. It is the way I view this certification is it's a management certification with some small technical aspects to it. The term, if you go study for this thing, it's a mile wide and an inch deep. You touch a lot of things in this when you're studying for it, or your experience is really broad. You're going to go be a leader somewhere in the field. And this organization, they were looking for somebody that was a pen tester, a coder, things of that nature. And we actually, I don't want to say we got into an argument, but they were pushing back on me saying, how can you have this certification if you've never done those things? And to me, it was blowing my mind, because we're seeing this out there in the cybersecurity field when you're looking at job requirements, that they've got CISSP on entry-level requirements. You have to have 5 years of documented experience to even take the certification, because it requires experience, requires a lot of experience in a lot of broad areas. And it's just blowing me away that the people that think they understand it are not listening to the people that do understand it. So I encourage you, if you're starting to explore, risk management strategies for your company, because you worked really hard to build your business, build a strong client base, know, like, and trust. People know, like, and trust you. You want to take the right steps to protect yourself. So if somebody keeps pushing back on you on the way that you're using phrases and the way you're using terminology, there's a good chance you've heard the buzzword, but you're using it wrong, and you're using it in the wrong connotation, and you need to correct that. So I would say drop the buzzwords and very plainly speak. Hey, instead of them saying they understand the term pen test, maybe they think they understand the word pen tester. Hey, but we're looking for somebody with the technical experience to kind of break into our systems and use it that way. Or instead of just going, hey, we need a CISSP, and assuming that covers it all because it's the top level one that they may have heard of. Number 3, technical people that have to be technically correct all the time. And this is one that super annoys me when I'm in meetings where we're doing a project kickoff, product launch or something along, not necessarily a product launch, but prepping for a product launch or implementation with something. I tend to try to talk to analogies. If I start picking up my audience, they don't have a deep technical background. So I raise that elevation, going back to that first point, being able to try to tie this back into business sense. And I want to make sure everybody at the table understands. I don't want to go deep down to, the bells and whistles. And I have been corrected many times by somebody at the table that has that deep level engineering, that deep level database development, things of that nature, that really likes to go in there and make the stuff work, to make the buttons work. And they just start talking all that stuff and almost correcting me and going way into the weeds. And you just see everybody at the table's eyes just glaze over. You don't want to do that. It's unnecessary. And in some cases, it's very counterproductive to what you're trying to get accomplished. So yes, if you're at a table and it's all engineers that are around you of various types, you need to have those technical talks. But if you're at a table and you've got multi-disciplines sitting around the room, and what do I mean by multi-disciplines? Let's say you're giving a status update. So you've got somebody that's doing finance, you've got somebody from human resources, you've got the business development person, you've got the sales, you've got the customer relationship person there. You've got to sit there and raise that conversation up. Don't get too focused into the weeds. One of the things I've started using recently is kind of like talking like the president's daily briefing. If you go look that up, they either get it once or twice a day, but it's a short summary of the top priority things that the president needs to deal with during that time frame. And I think it's only like a page, 2 pages, maybe tops. I guess it depends on who the president is, but they don't get into a 50-page bulleted list of everything, which is what I see happening in a lot of these group meetings. So please try to avoid that. Number 4, and this is something I've noticed when it comes to the federal contracting space, as federal government contractors are getting ready to be subjected to the new cybersecurity framework, that everybody sees everything as a risk, regardless of the context anymore. And I think that's one of those things that we really need to take a step back and look and say, what is the risk profile of this business, so we can start prioritizing right. And what do I mean by risk profile? How likelihood is the risk going to occur? And what would be the impact should that risk occur? I forget how many years ago this was. I was wrapping up a lunch meeting with another colleague, and somebody calls me. And I get this call from this cyber risk analyst guy, no clue who it was. And he was calling to yell at me because I had talked to one of his clients, and it was a random reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter or something. I don't even remember this at this point. I remember the yelling part of this conversation though. And what had happened was I had gotten a random phone call from like a 6 or 7 person company. I think they did landscaping, something like this, in another state. Like, I live in Virginia. This was in like New York. And they were very concerned with some stuff that was coming down, that they were going to basically be put out of business, and that they were concerned with the advice that they were given. And whoever they've been speaking to got a hold of my number, starts calling me and starts yelling at me that these guys needed to spend $50, $60, $70,000, some astronomical amount, to do everything on this list. And I'm like, dude, are you trying to put them out of business? You've got to go back and start prioritizing which of the things are likely to occur within their business and put in the proper steps, whether that's just a process and procedure to mitigate that risk and make it, the chances of it happening, to be small, or if you can eliminate it with a technical tool, as long as it doesn't break the bank. We need to get back to this not breaking the bank thing and start gradually getting people rolled into this. So the best way to do that is to really do look at the entire threat landscape of an organization and go, where are the big holes that would cause the most damage and are most likely going to occur, and start plugging those, and then work your way through the process. And that we need to get back to that, because I've told people, I said, I can take you down the risk rabbit hole as far as you want to go. I can make everything look like one. But that's not my intention. I think we need to start start getting people and getting that cultural mindset of risk management, risk awareness, that we need to sit there and really prioritize this. Number 5, I'm going to briefly talk about this. There's just way too many frameworks out there, I believe, for cybersecurity. There's tons of them. You can go look them up. NIST has tons of special publications that go into very deep subsets. You've got ISO, you got PCI, you've got HIPAA, and I'm sure there's others. Those are probably the ones that always come to mind first. And they've got all these different subsets. I used to actually have this chart that actually cross-referenced them all. And the bulk of them have the same controls, but they're just listed in a kind of a different way. And obviously, if you're in a financial sector, there's going to be a little bit more focus on certain things with money. Obviously, with HIPAA, you got a little bit more on personally identifiable information. But don't get me wrong, they both have that bleed over. They both have that crossover. And so my concern is, as these frameworks keep coming out there, that the businesses that really haven't taken a lot of approaches to cybersecurity risk management are going to get absolutely overwhelmed when they start doing their own due diligence, their own research into, hey, I built my business, we've got all this stuff here, but we really haven't dug into the risk management and the cybersecurity piece of this stuff. And When I look out there, there's like a bazillion frameworks out there with hundreds of controls in there, and they don't know where to start. And so then instead of reaching out for help, they just get overwhelmed and they just chuck it to the side. So that is a concern of mine as this continues to evolve. Software drives the world, of course, and the frameworks are great for the technical, the tacticians coming in there, particularly if you're in an environment that should and needs to be compliant. But I do believe it's overwhelming for others that have not started the process yet. Number 6, businesses that haven't started working enough with standard operating procedures and formalized roles within their organization. I think if they're starting from scratch and all of a sudden they're thrust into an environment where they need to be compliant, and somebody drops in a framework using 110 controls, that it's going to blow their mind. So if the rest of the company does not run on standard operating procedures, how are you expecting them to actually stick to operating procedures just around risk management? It's not going to happen. And it hasn't been happening. Look around. We can't get people to stick with patching procedures. You can't get people to do offboarding procedures. I've seen people have access to old email years after they've left the system because nobody turned them off. It's one of my pet peeves is offboarding procedures, because somebody's been gone in an organization and nobody, the technical team, they're not mind readers. They don't know when somebody leaves. Somebody has to tell them those things. So that the best way to start, is for the company to start working off standard operating procedures. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be perfect, because these things should be living and breathing. But if you start saying, hey, we're going to have a very set way that we're going to do client delivery, we're going to have a set onboarding way every single time, it's very much repeatable, your staff, your team starts working within those boundaries. So when you start trickling in, and I do use the term trickling in because I think you should start, again, building a foundation with some of the risk management process procedures, there won't be as much resistance because they're used to working within some boundaries. And the side benefit from that is you get predictable, repeatable results. Number 7, obviously you can't, there's too many businesses out there that just don't think they have any risk at all. They go, I've got a cyber insurance policy, I'm protected, I don't need to do anything. Let me get this straight and let me be as clear as possible. Cyber insurance policy is a prescriptive measure, meaning it does absolutely nothing to help you stop an event from happening. It doesn't stop your employee from clicking on a ransomware link that shuts down your business. It doesn't do anything to stop the laptop being stolen that has all the data on it, that has no passwords on it, to lock the machine out. This is not a preventative measure. It is way, way better to be preventative than it is to be prescriptive. The cyber insurance policy will probably help with payout. The cyber insurance policy will probably give you access to a very robust, awesome team of people to try to help you get your business back up and running again. But there's no guarantee. There is absolutely no guarantee that you got a ransomware attack that you'll ever be able to get those files unlocked again because of the wrong thing being done and you not having the proper tools and processes in place to recover from an event like that, or to try to stop it as much as possible. So please, you have to understand your risk profile. You need to understand some key metrics around your business, how much it costs to run your business per day, per week. What's the opportunity cost if you got shut down? How much does it cost for overhead? Believe me when I say, and this is going to sound, kind of dumb, but it's absolutely true. So there are many people that do not know what the breakdown of cost to actually run their business and how much money would fly by if they were shut down. They just wouldn't. I've had those conversations. I know that to be true. And the last one, to kind of wrap this up, businesses that think cybersecurity is just a technical problem. I hopefully have proved through these other steps that is clearly not the case, that it's woven throughout. But I've been using this analogy. I'm coming up with some new analogies here to try to prove my point and try to make the conversation approachable for others. But if you take any company, what's one thing that flows through every piece of the company? Well, that's money. Money flows through every department within an organization. So HR's got a budget, accounting has a budget, your sales team has a budget, marketing has a budget. So what's the thing when you got all these places that have a budget, they have to be good stewards of that money. They can't just go out and blow it. They can't take everybody out to expensive lunches and dinners. They can't just go buy whatever they want. They've got to work within the confines of that, and they've got to do right responsibly by the company, by clients, by the other team members with what they do with that money to drive value. What is the other thing that goes throughout an entire organization? It's technology. Everybody is functioning on, if not one device, like 7 different devices now, and working from wherever. Working from Starbucks, working from home, working from the library, working from their car, because we've got the ability to do that now. So it is absolutely impossible for your technical team, whether that's a group, a person in-house that you respond to, or even an outside managed service provider, a managed security service provider, to have any clue what everybody is doing at any given moment. It is on everybody to have that security conscious mindset when they're out doing whatever it is. Another example of this would be when it comes to data. The technical team in a lot of cases is the custodian of the data. They're the ones, they're the protectors. They're the ones that in a lot of cases, but not all, and I'll give you an example of this here in a second. In a lot of cases, if you've got a file share, for instance, or a SharePoint site, which is like a document repository, they may be the ones that click the button that gives you access to certain things, but they're not making that decision. The lead, that owner, the department head, is the one that says who gets access to what, and it's on them to actually sit there and go, all right, now take that access away. The technical team won't know that. It's on that other person. So that's a good reason why you've got to start building this culture throughout. It's everyone's responsibility. When they teach you cybersecurity culture, it's getting your champion. If you've got a new initiative that you're trying to really take hold, you need your champion strategically placed. So figure out within your organization how to strategically place champions to get that risk mindset, because it's way, way better to be preventative than it is to be prescriptive after the fact, because quite frankly, there may not be an after effect unless you're in a situation to be too big to fail. And if you have an event and you're a small business, the stats are out there. Go look them up. Good chance of being shut down and never recovering. And if it's out long enough, your customers are going to find out, and your reputation is probably going to be toast. So those are the reasons why I think that we've been failing at cybersecurity, and that cybersecurity is doomed if we don't solve these communication gaps in there and actually start getting technical people to start learning a little bit more about business and communicating to business leaders, and business leaders not necessarily having to understand the technical, but being open that there is a problem that they need to start solving it, and it's got to be across the board. It can't just be delegated to this specific group. So I got, like I said, made it to this point. I think I've been running for about 30 minutes now. If you want to understand the framework that I use to understand the cyber business risk, I've got 7 easy steps to understanding it. It requires business leaders to be involved. It requires your accounting department to be involved, and whoever your technical help is. And it's $7. I have the link in the description of this, and it's the exact thing that I use to start identifying kind of your threat landscape, so you can start figuring out exactly how you need to allocate resources, whether that's people, money, or additional tools, to start making sure that you're protected. Everybody has a different risk profile. There's no one size fits all. And if you think somebody's coming at you with a turnkey solution, walk away. You're either underpaying or overpaying, because it's not going to be fit to you. And that's one of the things when you're talking about risk management and cybersecurity and principles in general. It needs to flex. It needs to flex to be where you are at any given moment. So I hope this has been helpful. If you disagree with me, let me know. Hit me up and say I'm full of crap. If you think I've missed something that's also key in this discussion, please let me know. I'd love to have that conversation, maybe even have you on the podcast as a guest, and we can talk about where we agree and where we disagree. I'm open to that conversation. But after 20 years of 20 plus years of being at this in tons of different industries, and talking to tons of different people, CEOs to, the front desk clerk that you come in, these are the things that I've seen that kind of been rules. I can almost put rules to them and predict them at this point. So catch you on the next one.